Today is April 19th, 2018, episode 13 of The Useful Idiots.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Useful Idiots. I am Luke.
Hey, this is Paul.
So, Paul, we opened up, this is the second episode now, we have started our show with a clip from a famous character in American history, another president, actually. And this one was Dwight D. Eisenhower. And, it's a little actual odd. If you know anything about Dwight D. Eisenhower, he was a very well-respected president, but he did have, his government under his term did do some of the toppling over and helping of undercover activities, specifically in Iran, but he would not allow himself to be involved with listening or knowing about anything that was going on.
I did not know that.
I know you didn't know that. I wanted to save
Wow,
that for the show.
You saved that. You didn't even talk about it pre-show.
Yeah, it was a little
I
fun
still
fact.
want to yell 13 like I was before. Can I do that now?
No, you have to wait till 14 now.
Ah,
it's unfortunate. You
14!
It's an episode early, but, I'm sure the people...
This is episode 13. 13. I just got a lot of energy here.
Yeah, a lot of energy. After a week of researching this topic, we are burnt out, and we have a lot of pent-up rage and pent-up emotions. And he's going a little bit Alex Jones over there.
Ooh.
I'm just kind of trying to keep calm and forget that this actually happened in our history, but whatever. So we have a lot of things to talk about today, and it's going to be actually a pretty interesting episode for people who maybe support the belief that America needs to be the policeman of the world, or the fact that we believe that America is a is malevolent the correct word? Is just the good word? Whatever.
Malevolent.
Malevolent is the good word. Yeah,
I guess.
Is the word
I can't think of words right now.
Yeah. So a country that is
pretty bad time to not be able to think of words.
Yeah,
In
right.
the middle of a show.
In the middle of a show. Just a lot of people think that we're a country that is based off of good ideals, and we don't have any negative ideas. I don't know what you would call it. Negative actions that we want to pull on the country.
We don't do anything nefariously.
There you go. Sure. Yeah, nice job, Paul.
There's that word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, we should start off by saying the inspiration for this show was last Friday when we bombed Syria, and I don't know, it was such a intense night and weekend even when we bombed Syria, and it just seemed like things were gonna escalate. Now it's what? It's now
it's been 5
Thursday.
days.
Yeah,
it's been 5 days since.
So it seems like it's trending downward. It seems like it's de-escalating, or at least we're not continually bombing. It could have changed by the time this is uploaded, but things seem to be calming down.
Yeah, it was really that initial night, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, by the way.
Wow.
Which is I remember that my brother actually.
There's gonna be tons of YouTube videos about the numerology of us striking on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Also, I would advise
that's more my realm.
That is more your realm. I would advise anybody, by the way, to go onto YouTube and search up the videos of the bombs hitting Damascus. Is it Damascus?
You were watching those?
Yeah, I was watching those. There were at least probably about 3 or 4 people that I know somehow people compiled their videos of the bombings hitting the city.
Were they like video from news clips, or were they like cell phone videos?
Cell phone videos. Yeah, it was all cell phone videos actually, and it was kind of, you obviously can't really see any damage done because it's so far away and it's pitch black out.
Are they filming in widescreen, or are they holding it up?
They actually were holding it correctly. Yeah.
They're doing this.
Yeah. So the videos were uploaded nicely.
All right. Good.
So we have
for them.
quality photographers over in Syria. But it was not really fun videos to watch, because even if you understand that they were attacks specifically trying to hit only military bases or specific areas, there's a good chance that innocent citizens may have been hit, and there were a lot of explosions.
I think there was a news story out today saying how many civilians were killed in the action.
Do you remember any number? Any possible?
No, I wish I did at this moment, but
out of all the research we've done for this episode, that's the one thing that we actually overlooked. If you actually could maybe Google while we go into this.
I could try.
So what happened was that our government decided, after Trump was going to pull off of Syria, they were going to back off of Syria. We were done supporting rebel groups and fighting Assad. Right when we were doing that, for whatever reason, Assad supposedly gassed his own citizens. Now, this is happening a year after he supposedly did it last time, and that was when Trump first got in office, and he said he was going to pull out of Syria again. He didn't want anything to do with Syria, and all of a sudden, right when that happened a year ago, he decided to gas his own citizens, which is kind of coincidental. That means that's exactly when we say we're done fighting Assad, we're going to pull out, and then all of a sudden he gasses his own citizens. I would like to know how.
Where's the logic in that?
Where's the logic in that? You finally have won. You've pushed back the rebel groups. You've gotten the main supporter of those rebel groups to finally back off, and then all of a sudden you're going to do the one thing that would keep us there bombing and attacking you, both a year ago and this time. And you do it, and then we, of course, decide to do exactly what you would expect. We bomb you. Sorry, I shouldn't say we. We should say that our government,
the United States, Britain, Great Britain, and France.
Yes, exactly. It's not we. It's not even the people listening, because none of us are involved with this. We are innocent bystanders to a government that is just killing people, just killing people.
I'm looking at a story right now, and it says we fired 75 cruise missiles, and we targeted 3 buildings.
Seriously?
75 missiles in a cluster of 3 buildings. Now, I don't know the size and shape of those buildings offhand or in the story, but that seems like an excessive number of missiles for 3 buildings.
Well, Russia did say that they were going to try and defend Syria and shoot down as many missiles as they could. So I assume that they were probably sending as many as they could to ensure that even if they shot down half of them, even if half of them missed, another half were even shot out of those half, we'd still end up taking out the targets we expected. So that's probably why we would send so many of those missiles. But
I'm still trying to find the number of death total.
Yeah,
strangely, the media isn't reporting on that.
What are you using? DuckDuckGo or Bing? Are you using Bing there to try and find this stuff out?
No, good old Google.
Google, huh? So I just would like to remind everybody that this is the second time in 2 years that we tried blaming gas attacks on Assad, on his own citizens, and both times was after he actually technically won whatever conflict he was fighting, which means he was fighting our rebel-backed groups. So that's twice now that he apparently screwed himself over and got back into conflict with us, which doesn't make any sense. But there's also 2013, when Assad supposedly used sarin gas on his own citizens, which was another falsehood because it was found out that it was the Turkish government that was actually involved with those gas attacks.
It's kind of funny. Well, not funny, but sad that people, like people in politics, like left or right, there's a lot of distrust for the media going around. But whenever there's a story about war, everyone on both sides takes everything as fact that the media reports. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, growing up, I've always been, not always, but more or less been on the right side of the aisle. And
Meaning a right-leaning
right-leaning
political
politically.
party. Okay.
And so that I naturally distrust the media. But when I was younger, I believed the media whenever they talked about things that happen overseas, foreign conflicts, stuff like that. And now I just watch other people believe exactly what the media tells them, and I'm just like, why?
Well,
Like,
we
I
were
don't
both
understand.
naive for a very long time. I believed everything that the media said, but I was also on the right where I believed what AM radio talked about. I believed Mark Levin's, Michael Savage's, Dennis Miller, every single right wing
People pro-Republican.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone is pro-Republican, and I was suckered into that for just so long. I mean, I listened to it every single night for like 8 years.
Yeah, you've changed so much.
I still believe in following the Constitution, which was a big thing that Mark Levin would always stand by, until I actually realized that he doesn't. And he's really a war hawk, and so are all the rest of them.
I would still recommend Liberty and Tyranny as a book.
Yeah, I still have Meritopia and Liberty and Tyranny. Yeah, I enjoyed both those books, at least as much as I've read. I've read
But
a lot of it.
he's an angry warmonger.
Exactly. I'm not going to do my Mark Levin impression yet. So one thing I still couldn't really wrap my head around, and you and I actually had a slight debate over this before the show, was that in our own country, and obviously a lot of people say that constitutional rights only apply to our own citizens. Bullshit. That's a right for all human beings. All right. So we give a common thief in our own country the right to a trial before being punished, but we aren't willing
or being found innocent.
Or before being found innocent. But we don't give the same due process when the outcome is possibly a world war. They didn't even allow any research to go into this, any actual third party to look into the fact that this might have been or may not have been Assad.
You mean like the UN or somebody like that?
Anybody. It could be anybody at this point. I wouldn't care. As long as it was just somebody that...
Hey, let's send those useful idiots over there. You guys find out if it's chemical weapons or not.
It wasn't Assad. Okay. And but we have a situation where the stakes are possibly a world war, and we said, screw any research into this. We're gonna bomb before we even allow it to happen.
It's almost like it was pre-planned. Like we had the idea to do this before.
Yeah, it does.
Like
kind of.
we've been thinking about going into Syria before.
Yeah, it kind of feels like this.
Or some
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but But there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
All right, we had to play that.
General Wesley Clark, by the way.
That was General Wesley Clark, and this is a clip that it's gone around. I don't know for how long now, but if you
I don't think I heard it until a few years ago.
Yeah, it was pretty much more. It was more recent than that for me even, and we played that only because three of those on that list we know have already actually been affected. So now we have Iraq, which that was actually recorded right after Iraq, the second invasion in 2003.
I think he was promoting a book at the time.
I'll trust you on that one. But he also, his timetable is a little bit off. He did say in the next 5 years, about 7 countries they intended on actually going after. And we can argue that there's a lot of bureaucracy and other things that go into it, which is why the timetable could be off.
I think the timetable
now.
just got delayed.
Yeah, it got delayed. But he also did, of course, go in an order going with Iraq, Syria, and Libya, which is funny because it actually went Iraq, Libya, Syria. At least according to how this timetable is going now, which means that we still have Somalia.
Well, there was a lot of pushback when we tried to go into Syria. When we tried to do Syria last time, I remember there were soldiers protesting and things like that. The public was not behind it when President Obama wanted to.
Yeah, not whatsoever. And there really wasn't. It was just as little evidence back then as there was now. And we have seen that the gas bombs that were being used. I think 2009. There was another. They've been trying to do this. They've been trying to pull this on people for a while now. Were gas bombs that were provided from Germany. So it's German gas, sarin gas tanks.
Huh.
Yeah, which you might not know about that one. It's another one I kind of didn't add to the notes. But there's this. I mean, they've been trying to pull off. They've claimed that Assad has pulled, I think, 40 gas attacks on his people. And I don't really know if that number is true or not. That's an overstatement if you ask me. But I know of at least 4 now, and every single one of them have been actually debunked. Like there's just been no evidence that's been Assad, and we actually know that we immediately try and move in right after we say that, and then everybody's against it because it's like we actually see there is no evidence, and we actually see there's actually evidence against that fact that Assad's actually the one doing it.
So I mean, basically, what's happening is that we want to go in. Like ideally, what the government or people in the military want to do is go into Syria, get rid of Assad, put a puppet government in, and then we have access to the oil. Or they're going to build a pipeline. Yes. Or whatever it is.
Yeah, I would think that it has a number of things to do. It has to be one, that Russia is supporting Syria, and we have this weird vengeance against Russia.
Well, maybe Russia wants the oil. Maybe they want the same things we do.
Does it really matter?
I mean, they're in competition with each other.
I don't really think that either country has the right to it. And just because they want it doesn't mean that we should be trying to stop them. I think that we're kind of just as evil to be pulling off bomb raids on an innocent country because we want to have what Russia wants, or that we want it more than Russia does. I mean, all you're doing is trying to set up an opportunity to have another world war. And even if it's not a world war,
it's definitely a tense, dangerous situation.
Yeah, I don't really feel safe, and I'm somebody who doesn't worry much about wars and stuff. I just don't really think that people want to die. I don't think people want to kill themselves. So,
the thing that gets me too. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but everyone is just like Trump this, Trump that about the Syria action, but there's such a broader context. Like General Clark just said right there. Like they were talking about that in what year was that clip in?
I think it was 2005.
In 2005, but he was talking about stuff that happened in 2001 or 2003, somewhere in that general vicinity. So I mean, this isn't a Trump thing. I mean, Trump might play a role, but this isn't his action.
This goes back so far, Paul, and you and I, this is what we researched for the show.
Not that Trump's innocent either.
Yeah, Trump isn't innocent.
I'm not trying to
in fact,
necessarily defend him.
I think he's been co-opted for the most part. I think that he was actually sincere when he said he wanted to pull out of the Middle East.
There was that list of tweets that I had from Donald Trump talking about Syria from when he was candidate Trump.
Oh, yeah. Well, a huge difference from all candidates to all presidents.
Sad.
We can do that for every president since maybe Reagan, and even Reagan,
Candidates sound so great, don't they?
Oh, they sound amazing. So,
going back,
We can say that this obviously could have even started in the Philippines in the 1890s, but I didn't get the information to even go into that.
I was thinking about that one actually.
Were you really? I didn't want to add. I didn't want to go back that far.
I was like, oh man, that's so far back.
It's exactly. We have too much other information to cover, so we decided we're going to start with World War II.
Talk about the history of American citizens in the world being deceived by war.
Yeah, exactly.
By what the
the
reasons are that we get into it.
Yeah, what the U.S. government is willing to do to influence how the entire world's landscape kind of turns out. And it all started with the World War II, of course, where Japan did bomb Pearl Harbor, which got us into the conflict. But of course,
well, the mainstream media mainstream media and Hollywood has always portrayed it like America was just minding its own business, and then all of a sudden Japan, for no reason at all, just decided to attack us.
Which I believed for a very long time.
Because they're evil. Now, you can make the case that we were in the right for World War II. I certainly wouldn't argue that we weren't. But there's evidence showing that FDR knew that Japan was going to attack. And
yeah, but
some
why
say he allowed it to happen
Yeah.
to provoke us to get into the war.
But why would Japan attack us?
Well, that was interesting because how did it start? We were doing economic sanctions against Japan, and we had the potential to cripple their economy.
We were crippling their economy. We were doing blockades in the Pacific to make sure that they can't get any goods.
That's right.
And
Japan, they import a lot, probably a lot more than the United States does.
Well, they
They don't have a lot of resources on that island over
Yeah,
there.
it's just a mountain, just a mountainous area. So whether or not they were justified to kill many innocent American Navymen, I just can't really say that they were completely in the wrong. They were provoked.
Yeah, they were provoked
They were
to
provoked
attack us.
by us.
I mean, maybe FDR knew and maybe he didn't, but it was a perfect opportunity to get the United States public behind the war because they didn't want to get involved.
Yep. And that is what happened. Now, that's not the first or the last time.
That's not the end of it.
Yeah, it's not the end of it because only 10 years after that, we, of course, have Iran, which in the 1950s, the Iran democratically elected Mohammad Mosaddegh, he expelled any British ownership of the Anglo-Iranian oil company from the country, and he nationalized the oil reserves. So that pissed off Britain, and Britain being pissed off, of course, brought in America because we just, of course, have to work with all of our allies, apparently.
There's that oil again.
The oil, exactly. So we then set up an operation to use Iranian CIA agents to pose as communists and harass the religious leaders in Iran, and then we staged a bombing of a cleric's house. And that was all an attempt just to outrage the citizens. So we were just trying to play mind games on the citizens, trying to change the opinion.
Trying to change their perception.
Exactly, and to overthrow the government, which they did. It resulted in the overthrowing of the government, where we, of course, had General Zahedi handpicked to be in charge from 1954 to 1956. And then the Shah, the previous Shah, took over and ran for about another 25 years before the Iranian Revolution in 1979. So
nice job on the Iranian history there.
Thanks. Just read a little too much about Iran lately. And then, actually, your favorite thing would probably be Cuba, which you claim that I wouldn't have believed in any type of CIA operations going on about a year or two ago.
Well, it was, I guess I didn't think you would have called me a crackpot if I would have told you about
Still call you crackpot.
Operation Northwoods.
You're still a crackpot, Paul.
Operation Northwoods was, what would you call it? Like, they were running different scenarios.
Yeah, well, no, they didn't. They didn't actually really run any because
I mean, they were thinking about different scenarios to
I would
provoke
think it's
a war
more
with
than
Cuba.
thinking. They actually had the plans by all the chiefs of staff of at the time signed off on this. By the way, it was turned down, or at least I think it was. It just never actually made it. By
It was written down strategies, basically.
Yeah, I forgot McNamara. Was he a general or he was the whatever he was? McNamara declined allowing any of the Operation Northwoods to go through. So what it really was is just the CIA and just top officials they drafted plans to kill innocent people and commit acts of terrorism in U.S. cities to create public support for a war against Cuba. It's kind of like the best way, the most easiest way to describe exactly what Operation Northwoods was.
They wanted to create an act where they would harm American citizens.
Yeah.
They were going to blame Cuba.
Exactly. Now, they had a lot of different plans. Some of them were really just assassination of Cuban immigrants. Some of them were going to be sinking boats off of Cuban refugees coming to the U.S.
And there's another interesting one. Hijacking U.S. planes.
That's a very interesting one, actually.
Hijacking planes.
Do you believe there's a tie to the hijacking of the planes? Is it a common theme to you?
Where did I hear about planes getting hijacked before?
We're going to get into that, I think, shortly. So they wanted to do a lot of things. They wanted to blow up some U.S. ships and orchestrate a bunch of violent attacks on U.S. cities. None of the things happened. Awesome. That's very good, okay?
But there were ideas that they went so... It wasn't just people in a room BSing. They went so far as to draft a document with these suggestions on them.
And like I said, all the joint chiefs of staff. It's very hard to say that. They all did sign off on this. So the intention was to overthrow the communist leader Fidel Castro. It never happened, and Fidel Castro ruled for a very long time.
Lived a pretty long life.
Very long life after that. And then, just very shortly after that, now this is just consistent with the American government. It doesn't stop. You start to look into all the things that we do, and it was overwhelming. And I'm very happy this episode's going to be over.
Overwhelming is a pretty good term, because researching for all this stuff it wears on you.
Yeah, you were saying you were staring out windows.
Yeah.
I went for a walk.
I would close my laptop and I would just be sitting at the table, and it's just like silence, and I'm just like staring off into the distance.
Yeah, and in fact, right before recording this, I was doing more research just to brush up on everything. And before you came, I went for that walk. I had to. It's cold, by the way. It's 35 degrees.
It's cold and sort of snowy and icy out in the Chicago suburbs.
And I had to walk. I could not sit inside anymore. I had to go and walk just to hope that there was beauty, in the snow. And I had to just get the heck out of the house.
Did you find any beauty in nature out there tonight?
No, because my mind was still distracted by the death, the death that we're
laughing. I don't know why we're laughing though.
Yeah,
we shouldn't
I don't
be
know
laughing.
either.
It's just
you
just gotta
try and laugh about it. I mean, it's historical, so most of the people are dead from a lot of these times, at least for the time. Yeah, so give me a silver lining here. So then we had the Gulf of Tonkin incident,
which got us into the Vietnam
War, which was it was on August 2nd, 1964. So, the USS Maddox was a ship, a U.S. ship that was floating inside of the North Vietnamese waters. So they were getting close. They were supposed to keep a distance of about 12 miles away from the coast of North Vietnam. That was what North Vietnam said their territory was. We didn't really follow that. We kind of said, no, you guys only have 8 miles.
Yeah, we just went up.
So we actually went up to about 9 miles or 9.2 miles off the coast. With the belief that no, you don't have the right to be provoked in this situation. Well, during that time, we were so close to some torpedoes that the USS Maddox shot off some warning shots to warn the submarines that were nearby to get away. Well, the subs did not like that because they thought that maybe the shots were to them. They didn't really know what was going on, at least according to the story. And they responded by firing multiple torpedoes at the USS Maddox. They all missed. But of course, the next day after the USS Maddox left, it came back 2 days later to the same exact area near it. And this is when it gets a little foggy here with the actual facts, because we don't actually know, because this is when we believe, I shouldn't say we, I believe that this was a lie that got us into the war, because this was an incident when the radars apparently were saying there was about 26 to 28 torpedo missiles shooting at them, and they were in a 4-hour battle with these supposed 2 different submarines in the water. And they said that they eventually did destroy both of these submarines. There is no factual evidence to this, by the way. No factual evidence that the USS Maddox actually took out two submarines. But that was enough for them to send information back to the government, say, "Hey, we just were attacked. Time to go into Vietnam." And that's when it happened. We did.
I mean, I should also say that we were looking at Vietnam for years. Like, the CIA was over there for years before we ever got involved in a hot war there. Like similar to the General Clark scenario where they were talking about invading 7 countries in 5 years. We had our eye on Vietnam. Like, JFK, while he was president, like, they kept talking about escalating Vietnam, and JFK didn't want to go along with that. And
well, there was fears that if we did escalate anything, China backed North Vietnam, Russia backed North Vietnam, it would turn into a hot war between some of the most major powers of the time at the time.
And communism was very big then. Like
China and Russia, yeah.
The whole reason we went into Vietnam, according to them, other than the Gulf of Tonkin incident, was to stop the spread of communism in the region.
Yeah, the Gulf of Tonkin was just our excuse to get in.
Right, for a hot war.
Yeah, I have a lot of trouble believing that story of the August 4th, 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident.
I didn't know you had trouble believing that story. I don't think we've ever talked about the Gulf of Tonkin.
I don't think we ever
before.
have either. Yeah, this is definitely the first time. I believe you knew a lot more of it than I did before researching this, actually. But I just want to make clear to everybody that I wanted to keep kind of a running tally for each one of these wars that we decided to get into, or every one of these incidences that we have gotten into with other countries. And during the Vietnam War, there was a total of 47,378 total American deaths because of the Vietnam War. There was 223,748 South Vietnamese that were killed during this war. And the Viet Cong, or the North Vietnamese, had 1.1 million deaths. It might not have been as bad as World War I or World War II, but this is a terrible conflict that was all caused by lies. My belief that it was lies. So we lied ourselves into a conflict that killed, one?
Yeah, we did not.
Point.
We did not declare war in Vietnam. We should note.
Exactly, we did not. Yeah, so 1.37 million people were killed, which is just a prelude to the next president. We'll just move on to Nixon, because in Chile, in 1971, the Nixon government carried out covert operations in Chile and was providing funding through the CIA to overthrow the newly elected Marxist president Salvador Allende. We did fund General Augusto Pinochet, which, if you don't know, I mean, he's like an evil person, and most people know that name, and it just usually brings...
Yeah, Pinochet, I remember that.
Yeah, you
that
remember
name.
Yeah, and we funded General Augusto Pinochet to overthrow Allende's government, which Pinochet was so evil. He was the kind of man who would kill 3,200 people and torture 29,000 other citizens.
And that's probably a low estimate.
That's probably a low estimate. Tortured 29,000 people.
A whole stadium full of people.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Yeah, I really can't get that tortured part out. Deaths are one thing. And not to say those 3,200 people weren't tortured before they were killed, but 29,000 people tortured is just...
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, torture is one of the most barbaric human acts that we can do to people. So
not a fan of torture, huh?
No, I'm not. So let's just jump ahead, though, because we have 1982, El Salvador. And America backed the El Salvador government, who killed 800 innocent villagers, all because of a proxy war that we were engaged in at the time with, of course, versus Russia. We couldn't just have an outright battle with Russia, so why not just use all these other innocent little countries on the map, just start...
We're okay with foreign governments killing civilians if there are foreign governments.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like the foreign governments on our side.
Yeah. You support us? Well, you can kill whoever you want, really, then. I'm not too worried about it. And then kind of like the really major parts are what we're going to get into now. And these are the ones that you obviously lived through.
I mean, you lived through it too as well, but I think you were a little young to remember these.
I should say the Gulf War. No,
Oh, no.
I was not alive
No,
in the
you were
Gulf
not
War.
alive.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I actually was born 2 years after the Gulf War ended. So I'm going to let you kind of hop on that one because that's for you, man.
Well, in the first Gulf War, which is about 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait over an oil dispute over slant drilling into that went into the opposing territory. Kuwait was drilling into Iraq, and Saddam Hussein, a name that you may be familiar with, was quite unhappy with that slant drilling and then decided to invade Kuwait. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the geography of the region, but Kuwait is right next to our huge ally, Saudi Arabia, and they were pretty nervous about that, and they wanted United States help. But back in that time, George H.W. Bush was president, and we were not public opinion was not really for the war in the beginning. But then they released, what would you call it, a propaganda campaign?
Yeah, I would call it a propaganda campaign.
To get us to get the United States into the war. And why don't you take us through this girl's testimony?
Yeah, a lot of people listening to this may have actually heard this before, and many may have not. And if you have not, this will be probably an eye-opening experience for you, as it was to everybody else.
So yeah, this girl was testifying. We could get into who she was in a minute. But they brought this girl in front of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus in October of 1990 as a 15-year-old girl, and she went on and she said this.
The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor.
I mean, this girl was everywhere back then, like during that time period. She was all over the news. It was everywhere. And then George H.W. Bush even talked about it in another
They had
speech.
kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
I mean, that was. It almost sounds silly now to hear those clips, and to think about why would soldiers need incubators, but man, at the time it just seemed like Iraq. Like I was a kid, and it just seemed like Iraq was so evil, and they
did a good job at that, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, at least to me, being a child at that time, like I was like, wow, Iraq's really evil. Like we gotta do something. We gotta stop them.
Well, that's kind of a normal thing where I still have people that they have a lot of trouble looking at the Syrian conflict with objectively. And whenever I try and say things like when I try and explain to a year ago, when the first time that Assad supposedly gassed his people, and I explained how kind of absurd that is to say that he would be willing to gas his own people right when he's actually technically won the conflict. And then that exact gassing knowingly would bring the conflict back to him.
Knowing
bring
the
on another
international
war.
community has their eye on him.
Yeah, and when I say that to people, specifically a couple Middle Eastern friends, they would say things like, no, Assad's just an evil person. And I really have trouble trying to put myself in the perspective of, you believe this man is worse than Hitler, that he's like, even if you are as bad as Hitler at least understood the tactical advantage of not doing that.
Right.
You know,
right.
You wouldn't do that. You shot yourself in the foot. No, you cut your own leg off when you do that.
I mean, if you wanted to kill some civilians, if you're Assad, well, you could just use conventional weapons, and then it won't get the attention of the
exactly. Not the
community.
one thing that they said you cannot do. You know.
But going back to that girl, what was her name?
It was I forgot how to say Nayira al-Sabah. Yeah, it was Nayira al-Sabah, who was actually the daughter of Saud al-Sabah.
When she testified originally, they said that they couldn't reveal her name because of there might be reprisals against her, which is understandable in the context that she was a Kuwaiti citizen and all the stuff. But then a couple of years later, it was revealed that she was al-Sabah, that was her last name, and that she was the daughter of Saud al-Sabah, who was the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States.
Just bomb drops.
So this wasn't just some random girl that they found. It was the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States' daughter, and she was just basically used to give a testimony to say those things so we can get the United States into the war.
Exactly. It's all a propaganda campaign just to get the
I mean,
public
it's
opinion.
sick that they used a 15-year-old girl to do that.
Yeah, and I would like to know.
I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily, blame her for that. I mean, yeah, you're 15. I mean, your dad and like the United States government's standing there like saying, "Do this." I mean,
yeah, she was a good actress.
I don't know. I didn't even. Those are crocodile tears that she was crying in the clip.
Yeah, if you listen to the audio,
The audio is
different.
very good. I'll say that.
Yeah, it is very good. If you watch the video, it is.
I believed it as a kid. I was
Yeah.
maybe 10 or 11 or so.
Yeah, that's understandable then.
Yeah, I mean, she's only 4 or 5 years older than me.
Exactly. But that only lasted for a little bit of time of peace there, because we were right back into the Middle East, and that was Afghanistan.
Another 10 years. 10 years later.
10 years later, right
After
back over there.
9/11.
We had that just a very short time of supposed peace, and we went. Well,
Man.
technically, I should say this: we were actually still occupying Iraq in that time until 1997, when we decided to pull out, and that's when we stopped watching their weapons programs. We stopped
That's right. We
checking
were
everything.
observing all that stuff. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so then it was about 4 years technically of really just us being out of there, and that is when we had.
It didn't feel the same though when we were over there during that time. I mean, man, we won so decisively in Desert Storm. Like it was.
It was
just,
only a year.
Yeah.
It was only a year.
Yeah, like we went in there and we kicked ass and we left. Like, I hate to say it like that, because like, I guess I'm torn between my memories of the time period and the rational me that
Now.
now that says like war is terrible.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
A
kind of
completely unnecessary conflict.
I feel like I could step between two worlds at least for that conflict. And I really had the sensation that peace was going to last like a long time. Like something like September 11th happening was inconceivable to me growing up here in the United States.
You were still pretty young, and
I was
probably
still relatively young. I mean,
naive.
and just man, when 9/11 happened, like the world was never the same.
Yeah,
I mean,
it not only was it never the same, but if you actually were to look at my life, and I was, I'm at the tail end of the millennials. 93. I was
you're
born.
right, smack dab in the millennials. Who you kidding?
Shut up. So what happened was I actually have only been alive for 8 years of conflict-free America.
So you were 8 years old when Iraq War started, or
I was 10 when
Afghanistan?
when Afghanistan started. I was 8, and then I was 10 when the Iraq War started. And then if you think about it, you have my sister who was only 4 years old when a conflict-free America. So she only known 4 years.
So
she wasn't even conscious.
She doesn't know peace at all.
She doesn't know peace at all. Your kids, absolutely none.
Nothing.
Absolutely only conflict, American conflict. That's all they have.
Wow, that's sad.
It's very sad, and I think you sent me that.
I think they don't even really comprehend.
Well, because it's so foreign.
don't-
All they know is conflict. So to them, that is normal. Like they don't comprehend it because like they don't even think about it. Like Middle Eastern conflict is just a thing in the
That's
news.
just something that always happens. Yeah,
It's just something in the news. It's like traffic for them.
yeah.
It's like a traffic update.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty
When you put it that way,
terrible, right?
yeah, kind of makes me feel a little sick inside.
Yeah, well, we've been feeling sick for about a week now, so just studying all this. So we move on, obviously, to us invading Iraq in 2001. Afghanistan in 2001 after 9/11.
Now 9/11. I mean, we don't want to get into all the minutia of 9/11, but let's just say that
there was
not
more,
everything adds up with 9/11.
Exactly. Not everything adds up with that one. We also just found out more recently, of course, the Saudi Arabia papers of showing the Saudi Arabia was involved. We're going to actually probably do a show.
We're going to have to do a show at some point in the future about 9/11.
It's such a broad topic, and for something that both of us, actually being in the middle of our lives, we weren't alive for JFK's assassination, but we were alive to really see one of the biggest events happen in our life. We'd like to actually probably do a full episode on that.
Definitely. We could maybe... I don't want to commit us to doing more than an episode, but at least an episode on 9/11.
Exactly. So the thing was, though, is that we just wanted to we do want to touch on what the supposed reasons why we got involved in Iraq were, and that was because of the weapons of mass destruction.
Links to Al Qaeda.
Yeah,
links to Bin Laden.
Links to Al
helping
Qaeda.
Bin Laden.
Exactly, and not only that, there was also, which all those were lies. By the way, we obviously sent people in there to inspect this, and of course we sent weapons inspectors, and they found nothing.
No one's ever found any weapons of mass destruction in
well,
Iraq.
what
to
they
this
did
day.
find was they found weapons that were from 1997 when they were still when they left the research facilities, and they were just old bombs that were just still sitting around. So they did find something, but it was nothing. They weren't making it. They weren't researching new stuff. They had no facilities that were actually made or designated for this. And then I actually had to bring this up to you, and I don't know if you remember this, but the anthrax attacks of 2001, which was September 18th, 2001.
Yeah, after 9/11.
They immediately, without any hesitation, blamed it on Iraq and Al Qaeda and Osama.
I actually don't remember that. I don't remember them who they blamed it on right away.
Well, I did all the research to find that out.
Ah, there we go. Ding.
Yeah. And then in 2008, it came out in the papers that it was, in fact, actually a U.S. government scientist who was sending that stuff out.
Was he sending it out on his own, or was he sending it out with like under orders?
I was looking for this probably. I was trying to read as much as I could, and unfortunately, I have the scientist's name was Bruce E. Ivins, Ivins, and
Was he arrested?
At that point, he actually committed suicide.
Oh,
yeah.
very,
Just wink, wink. He committed suicide.
Okay.
With a acetaminophen overdose.
Oh.
So, I just think that everybody should probably look into that. And
That sick feeling in my stomach is coming back.
It's coming back again. Yeah, it doesn't really last. It
didn't
doesn't
really go away
long.
for very long.
Yeah. So obviously we can speculate about Bruce E. Ivins' death. I'll let you take your own. You can decide for yourself, basically.
Yes.
So you can look him up and find out exactly more information about if he acted alone or what happened. I really, unfortunately, could not find a lot of information. I didn't really look too hard because I was researching a lot of other stuff. But
that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you. Now there was one more thing I wanted to just bring up: the amount of deaths in the Iraq conflict. Now these numbers really, really vary, and I'm just going to tell you what I was able to find, and I'm going to give the low estimates because it's just easier that way. I don't actually blow it out of proportion, and they're still insane anyways. So the American deaths, which is terrible, 4,497 Americans have died. And Iraqis, all the way up until 2013 was the only data I could find. So that means that there's 5 years of data I could not find in this area. That was 184,512 citizen and combatant deaths.
Wow.
184,512 deaths up until 2013. That means there's 5 more years of more deaths, which I would probably only assume maybe another 1,000 or so. There weren't really that many in the last few
I
years.
suppose things haven't been really hot over there over the last couple of years, but we're still there.
But we're still there, exactly, and there are still deaths happening.
Do you want to play the clip?
Which one exactly are you talking about?
The montage clip of all the
let's play
the lies.
Let's do that. I'm gonna do that for you.
Iraq conflict.
It's a 7-minute clip, and I think that everybody would actually.
Is it that long?
Yeah, it is. You want to skip it?
How
we post it on the website.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we'll post it in the show notes so everybody, if they really want to listen to it, it's a 7-minute clip.
It's a 7-minute clip of lies and inconsistencies and contradictions, just involving this war. I mean, it was very easy. It was very easy for me to find clips of that. It didn't take very long.
Yeah, but the good thing is that Paul is there to clip everything up for you, make a nice little montage, and we could post it on our website to make it easy for everybody. That's what we're here for.
What's that website again?
usefulidiotsshow.com.
Hey, there we go.
And well, I only really have a couple things I want to end off on, and that's going to be I got a few thoughts, but I just want to make sure I bring up that everybody should know that since 2015, Saudi Arabia has had a blockade on Yemen, and we are backing Saudi Arabia and the blockade. And because of this blockade, there is massive shortages of medicine, clean water, and food. And as of right now, there are over 1 million cases of cholera. As of 2017, there are many children, many babies and many children that are starving and dying because of this cholera outbreak and lack of goods. And I really cannot believe that we're going to be outraged about Assad possibly gassing 17 people, and we're not going to be extremely upset at America, the supposed police and godsend to the world, allowing 1 million people to die and supporting 1 million people to have cholera and supporting Saudi Arabia, which is just a terrible, oppressive country of its own. So,
well, I mean, it's kind of a double speak, like you kill 40 people or 17 people or however many it is, and then we're going to come in and we're going to stop you from doing that, but we're going to kill many more innocent people.
Yeah, of your own people.
Of your own people.
Yeah,
exactly. It seems like, two wrongs don't make a right. I hate to get down to that being that basic, but I mean,
well,
it's
what
true.
It is, though. It is that. We're going to kill hundreds, if not thousands, of your people because you may have killed 17 of your own people.
I mean, as far as war goes, like, it's not like our liberties are being threatened.
Not even being
by
touched.
Libya.
Nope.
And I just keep thinking about, I hate to be kind of nerdy here, but I keep thinking about George Washington warning about the United States being in entangling alliances, and like the role that we have in the world and in the alliances that we have. Like, man, he sure was right about that.
Isolationism was the best option. And we kind of threw that out the window pretty early on in our
if we could at least take a step towards isolationism, like, we don't even have to go all the way. If we just head in that direction a little bit, man, like,
be pretty amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be a
really
nice change of pace.
So I think we should ask everybody to put themselves in the shoes of people in the Middle East. Really, just imagine being occupied for 35, 40 years. Sorry, 30. What was I say? 30 years, just to be on the low side.
And try and think a little beyond what the media might tell you about any war or future conflict that pops up, and see if that country the next country we invade is on the list that General Clark was talking about earlier.
And I recommend going back and listening to that General Clark clip, and we will put that in our show notes for at least a YouTube link of him doing the interview. And everybody, we're gonna end it off. We're gonna end it off here for the day.
On a somber note.
On a somber note. What's are we?
Well, I guess so. I mean, we don't have any clips of any pickle jars or anything to talk about there.
No, unfortunately, we don't. Well, we can.
When we brought the show back, I always imagined us as like a right wing, like almost like a Daily Show, and the last few episodes, it keeps getting the subject matter keeps taking us in a direction that I never thought we'd go in, talking about the government and government power and Orwellian systems of control in our country or other countries, just and war and death.
It took a turn, didn't it?
It did.
I will say, guys, that just remember what the famous George W. Bush said, that you can fool me once, but
if fool me, we can't get fooled again.
We'll see you guys next episode. Try and have a great day. All right, I want to thank everyone for tuning in for today's episode. Please be a useful idiot. Subscribe to us on YouTube at The Useful Idiots Show. Follow us on Twitter at Useful Idiot Show. Subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen, and visit our website at usefulidiotshow.com. We do, of course, expect to see you back for the next episode.
It concludes that Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them, that he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes, including against his own Shia population.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Any country on the face of the earth with an active intelligence program knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
The choice is his. And if he does not disarm, the United States of America will lead a coalition and disarm him in the name of peace.
Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda. Secretly and without fingerprints, he could provide one of his hidden weapons to terrorists or help them develop their own. Before September the 11th, many in the world believed that Saddam Hussein could be contained. The war on terror is, you can't distinguish between Al-Qaeda and Saddam when you talk about the war on terror. We've learned that Iraq has trained Al-Qaeda members in bomb making and poisons and deadly gases. He's a threat because he is dealing with Al-Qaeda. We know that Iraq and Al-Qaeda have had high-level contacts.
He has not developed any significant capability with respect to weapons of mass destruction. He is unable to project conventional power against his neighbors.
We are able to keep arms from him. His military forces have not been rebuilt.
It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction there.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not. We know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north somewhat.
You said you knew where they were, near Tikrit, near Baghdad, and north, east, south, and west of there. Those are your words.
My words were, we know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north somewhat.
Senator's got his facts wrong. I have not suggested there's a connection between Iraq and 9/11.
With respect to 9/11, of course, you've had the story that's been public out there. The Czechs alleged that Mohammed Atta, the lead attacker, met in Prague with a senior Iraqi intelligence official 5 months before the attack.
He said there were three main reasons for going to war in Iraq: weapons of mass destruction, the claim that Iraq was sponsoring terrorists who had attacked us on 9/11, and that Iraq had purchased nuclear materials from Niger. All three of those turned out to be false.
First, just if I might correct a misperception, I don't think we ever said, at least I know I didn't say, that there was a direct connection between September the 11th and Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda.
You have said in the past that it was, quote, pretty well confirmed.
No, I never said that.
Okay. I
never
think
said
that is...
No, it's absolutely not. What I said was, it's been pretty well confirmed that he did go to Prague and he did meet with a senior official of the Iraqi intelligence service.
Well, let me just ask you this. If they did not have these weapons of mass destruction, though, granted all of that is true, why then did they pose an immediate threat to us, to this country?
You and a few other critics are the only people I've heard use the phrase immediate threat.
That he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes.
Active chemical munitions bunkers, mobile production facilities.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
The reason I keep insisting that there was a relationship between Iraq and Saddam and Al-Qaeda, because there was a relationship between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
You know, what has been happening as we debate the number of troops, as we debate whether to withdraw, is also this continual debate over the intelligence leading up to the war. And I know you've said you believe that it's wrong to question the motives or the honesty of administration officials, but I have a different question for you. If you had known that no weapons of mass destruction would be found, would you have advocated invasion?
I didn't advocate invasion.
You didn't?
No, I wasn't asked. If you read all the books and the things...
You weren't, but why weren't you asked? That's very puzzling.
Well, I'm sure the president understood what my views were, but as a technical matter, did he ever look and say, What should we do? Should we go do this or not do that? This is something that the president thought through very carefully.
Are you trying to distance yourself from the war with that?
Of course not. I agreed completely with the decision to go to war. And said that 100 times. And don't even suggest that.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, well, you know better. Look, the interesting thing to me about the pre-war intelligence is clearly it was wrong.
Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions.
But would you have been for an invasion if we had known that?
The answer is probably yes.
When it comes to who else knew the American public was being lied to about Iraq, one Democratic senator now says you can add the entire Intelligence Committee to the list. Dick Durbin of Illinois making the amazing claim on the floor of the Senate that while he and perhaps the 16 other members of that Intelligence Committee knew the administration was misleading the American public, he, perhaps they, kept quiet about it because due to his position on the committee, he had been sworn to secrecy.
A few hundred feet away from here, in a closed room, carefully guarded, the Intelligence Committee was meeting on a daily basis for top secret briefings about the information we were receiving, and the information we had in the Intelligence Committee was not the same information being given to the American people. I couldn't believe it. Members of this administration were in active, heated debate over whether aluminum tubes really meant that the Iraqis were developing nuclear weapons. Some within the administration saying, of course not. It's not the same kind of aluminum tube. At the same time that members of the administration were telling the American people to be fearful of mushroom-shaped clouds. I was angry about it. Frankly, I couldn't do much about it. Because you see, in the Intelligence Committee, we're sworn to secrecy. We can't walk outside the door and say, the statement made yesterday by the White House is in direct contradiction to classified information that's being given to this Congress. We can't do that. We couldn't make those statements. And so in my frustration, I sat here on the floor of the Senate and listened to this heated debate about invading Iraq, thinking the American people are being misled. They are not being told the truth.